皆さんまた来てくださってありがとうございます。こちらマンハッタンはニューヨーク、金曜日の朝です。すっごくいい天気です。ということで今日の動画は水曜日の夜にフロリダ知事のディサントスさんっていう方が共和党から大統領候補として立ちたいっていう表明をされたんですね。でその動画なんですけど、この方は水曜の6時にツイッターでなんかやられたそうなんですけど、ツイッターにすごい人が集まりすぎてクラッシュしたそうなんですよ。で私が上げる動画は FOX ニュースで初めてインタビューに答えた、表明してから初めてインタビューに答えたっていうのを上げてみたいと思います。皆さんの意見もお聞かせください。それではサントスさんどうぞ。
Ask him about his plans for the country as well as how he will address the issues confronting our culture and our country.I can't promise you that I won't crash, but Fox News will not crash during this interview.
We had a huge audience. It was the biggest they'd ever had. It did break the Twitter space. And so we're really excited with the enthusiasm. But ultimately, it's about the future of our country. Trey, I'm running to lead a great American comeback. We know the country's on the wrong track. We see it with our eyes.We feel it in our bones. We see the border being overrun. We see crime infesting the cities. We see the federal government making it more difficult for families to make ends meet. And we have a president who is a listless vessel, not energetic, and not dealing with the key challenges that are facing our country. But it does not have to be this way. Our decline as a country is not inevitable. It is a choice. And I think we can choose a better pathway. And so what I will do is help restore normalcy.to our communities, integrity to our institutions, and sanity to our society. Truth needs to be the foundation of everything we do, and common sense can no longer be an uncommon virtue. We proved it could be done in Florida. We chose facts over fear when it wasn't popular. We chose education over indoctrination. And we've chosen law and order over rioting and disorder. If we can do it there, we can do it for the country. And the pledge I'll make for people is simply this.We need to win again as Republicans. We got to dispense with this culture of losing. And if you nominate me, I pledge to you that on January 20th, 2025 at high noon, that I'll be the guy on the west side of the Capitol with the left hand on the Bible and the right hand in the air, taking the oath of office as the 47th president of the United States. No more excuses. We've got to get this one done. And anybody that's so inclined to help us, I would love to have your support.At rondesantis.com. If you make a donation, maybe we can break that part of the internet as well.
Governor, you anticipated my first question, which is why. My second question would be, why now? You are very young in terms of political years. I don't even think you're 45 yet. So why now? And what distinguishes you from the other candidates? Are there policy differences, or is it more about electability and how you would implement those policies, even if you agree on them?Well,
why now? I think it's because the country's going in the wrong direction. If we have another 4 years of the Biden administration, I think some of the damage is going to be irreversible. I think we have an opportunity now, kind of like the late 1970s when Jimmy Carter was president, to really move the country in a much stronger direction. And really bring a lot of bold leadership to bear. Why me? Well, I think what we've been able to do in Florida is two things. One,We've had unprecedented policy success. All the things that we believe as Republicans or as conservatives for many, many years, we've been able to take those values and those principles and actually turn them into reality. Every single day we put up big wins on the board, but we're doing that while also enjoying major political success. You alluded to it. We were able to win re-election by a historic margin, over 1.5 million votes.And you can't do that in a swing state like Florida just by getting Republicans. We were able to win counties like Miami-Dade County, which had voted for Hillary Clinton by 30 points in 2016. We not only won it, we won it by double digits. We earned 60% of the Hispanic vote. We won independents by 18 percentage points. And now, for the first time since the Civil War era, there's not a single Democrat elected in statewide office in the state of Florida. You got to be able to win.And then when you get in office, you've got to be able to deliver results. And I think we've been able to do both of those as good or better than anybody in the country.
All right. Speaking of delivering results, if you were to become the president, one of the first issues you would confront is inflation. What would you do about inflation, and do you believe it is linked to deficit spending, and can deficit spending be addressed without addressing mandatory spending, or what people call entitlements?
Of course the overspending is driving inflation. I mean, if you go back to March of 2020, you've seen massive amounts of debt added. You've seen the Federal Reserve print trillions and trillions of dollars. Anybody knew at the time, and people like our friend Thomas Massey were screaming from the rooftops at the time that it was going to lead to persistent inflation. So you need to spend less money. You also need to expand domestic energy production. Energy costs contribute to inflation. We have an abundance of resources here that this president doesn't want to use. So we will reverse Biden's energy policies very quickly. But we also need a Federal Reserve that's going to focus on maintaining a stable dollar. They should not be the economic central planner for our country. They're not accountable to anybody. They're not elected by anybody. And yet their printing of money has really thrust us into this. They said there wouldn't be inflation, and yet here we are. Now they've been hiking interest rates, and that hurts the economy. So we need a Fed focused on a stable dollar, and don't worry about trying to manipulate the rest of the economy.
If a candidate for the Republican nomination or president says, I can balance the budget, I can restore fiscal sanity, and I can do so without touching mandatory spending or what others call entitlements, should that person be believed?
Well, Trey, you know the math. I mean, at the end of the day, we're spending so much more, and it's a combination of both. I mean, there are some spending programs that are on autopilot that Congress doesn't even touch, and those have grown dramatically. You have also, though, seen a huge increase in what they call discretionary spending, certainly in the last 4 or 5 years. Congress is spending at levels that you and I couldn't have even fathomed back in the day. So I think it's a combination of all these things. You know, right now we have a situation where Joe Biden is refusing to do really anything to try to limit how much money is being spent. And I think he's been singularly irresponsible in terms of how he's handled the federal budget.
All right, Governor, people hear words and sometimes use words like woke or culture wars. What is the role of the president in participating in culture wars? And I'll ask you specifically about education, because many conservatives think that's a state issue, but that's also a battleground for what people call woke or culture wars. As president, what role do you play? I know governor, but as president, what role would you play?
Well, first of all, the woke mind virus is basically a form of cultural Marxism. At the end of the day, it's an attack on the truth. And because it's a war on truth, I think we have no choice but to wage a war on woke. So how does that work for a president? Some of it may be the bully pulpit, being willing to tell the truth and not being deluded by ideology, which we see in many aspects of our society. There are probably ways, though, that you can make a difference. Certainly when you look at ESG and some of the things that's going on with major financial institutions in corporate America, we have every right to be pushing back on that. With education, you know, the federal government approves the accreditors for universities. There's a reason why universities are infested with things like DEI. Yeah, some of it is they may want to do that, but some of it is the accreditors tell them you have to do that. Well, as president, I'll make sure we're approving accreditors that are going to do the opposite. That are going to say, you know what, we're going to accredit you if you are a colorblind university, if you're not trying to divide people on the basis of race. So there are different tools at your disposal. It's not the same as a governor, but I think you can have an impact across a wide variety of different areas.
Governor Ron DeSantis. We're going to be right back after a quick break, and we'll have more conversation with the governor, and that's coming up.
ということで、いかがだったでしょうか。私の意見はですね、もちろんトランプさんなんですね。で、これ理由は2つあって、1つは2人とも素晴らしい方だと思うんですけど、この今見てもらったディサントスさんの政策というか考えは、全てトランプさんがやってこられた、4年間でトランプさんがやってこられたことなんですよ。だから、すでにトランプさんがやってることをディサントスさんが同じようなことを言ってらっしゃるんですよね。で、だからトランプさんだったらばすぐにデイ1から問題を解決できると思うんですね、すでに。 で、ディサントスさんは、経験がないっていうことと、若いっていうことと、あと、アメリカにいる人ならばみんな見てきてると思うんですけど、いかに DS 左左翼が汚い方法で、こういう人を叩くかっていうのをいくつも見てきているんですよね。で、ディサントスさんっていうのは奥様とお子さんがまだちっちゃいんですよ。で、若いじゃないですか。だから、この嫌がらせに耐えられるかなって思うんですよ。で、ミイラ取りがミイラじゃないけど、結局、それに耐えられなくて寝返っちゃうっていう懸念が絶対あると思うんですね。で、なぜかっていうと、トランプさんの息子さん、娘さんたちってのはもう、彼ら自身がファイトバックできる人たちなんですけど、このディサントスさんっていうのは赤ちゃんですよね、子供さんが。なんか嫌がらせの種類が FBI、CIA、DOJ、もうすべて IRS、すべての公の機関を使って嫌がらせをしてきますから、なんか、例えて言うなら、なんかトランプさんが大足だとしたら、このディサントスさんはまだヒナで、ヒナ一匹でピヨピヨ言いながら、ワシントン DC のハイエナの群れの中に入っていくような感じを受けるんですよね、私は。だから、このヒナが成長して大足になったら、ハイエナをも食らいつくような強い、獰猛な猛禽類になるんだろうけど、今ヒナだから、このハイエナの群れの中に入っていくわけですよね。ワシントン DC のヒラリーだの、こういう海線山線の何十年もハイエナとしてやってきた群れに入っていくっていうのが、どうもね、こう、見てられない感じがするんですよね。だから副大統領ぐらいになってトランプさんのヘルプをしながら、その外交でも何でもコツを彼なりに掴んで、新しいやり方で掴んでいくのはすごい嬉しいんですけど、ちょっと大統領っていうのは本当に賛成しないんですね。彼のためにも、アメリカのためにも、共和党のためにも、私はトランプさんを推します。ということで、後半が大しゃべりの長しゃべりになってしまってごめんなさい。ロングウィーケンドなので許してください。ということで、ぜひぜひ皆さんの意見もお聞かせください。それでは、素敵な週末をお迎えください。